Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hibba Youssef.
Call Your Mother's a very vibrant brand. Our experience when you come in, you're hit over the face. We have these bright pink buildings, all of that. But what it's not is it's not a prescription for, okay, this is how you are vibrant. And we expect every single team member to look and be and act these ways. But it is something everyone can kind of bring their own thing to. And that's what makes it exciting. Of course, because we have the framework, it makes it so much easier to be able to coach and to know when you're out of line.
Internal, no vowels, pronounced internal, is the platform your creative team didn't know they needed until now. It helps you tap into the hidden passions of your employees with super personalized visual profiles. Want to know your junior designer is not just a designer, but also a Bravo Reddit mod, Bad Bunny stan, and TikTok-obsessed animator? Now you can. In seconds, you'll see your people as they see themselves and match them to projects they actually care about. Unlock all the talent sitting under your own roof. Head to seeyourpeople.com to learn more. Welcome back to another episode of the I Hate It Here pod. This season, I've been bringing you guests and exploring their zone of genius, really around where they do their best work and what we can learn from them. And today's guest, I'm really excited about. And I know, I say that a lot, but what can I say? I know some really cool people. And today's guest is just as cool as everyone else I know. And also, I happen to be a really big fan of where they work, mostly because I have a real treat yourself kind of vibe. So when I'm really stressy and I want a treat, I turn to my favorite bagel shop in DC, Call Your Mother. And today's guest happens to be their Chief People Officer, Nikki Rappaport. Nikki Rappaport has a decade of experience as a creative marketer and experienced designer and excels at defining brands and propelling them into rapid growth backed by fanatical customer demand. I would know because I am fanatical about my bagel shop. Previously, she led brand and marketing at Cava, playing a key role in taking the local restaurant brand national. Now she's the Chief People and Culture Officer at Call Your Mother, a neighborhood bagel shop in Delhi with big plans to grow. If you're lucky, they'll end up in one of your cities. She's a masterful storyteller and a natural leader. Nikki thrives on cultivating strong relationships, building trust, and delivering exceptional experiences internally and externally. So I'm so excited she's here. Nikki, welcome.
Hi, what an intro. Thank you.
It's not every day somebody raves about their favorite bagel shop, right?
Well, in my world, it is. Happens a lot. But it's always really great to hear.
I also have to call out, if you are not in, Call Your Mother's in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and there's a Denver shop as well, right?
Yeah, couple in Denver.
There you go. If you have one nearby, first of all, you have to go. The interior design is so cool. I love the branding. I love the marketing. I'm a little obsessed with it, and we'll get to that later. But I just have to say, it's my favorite treat yourself kind of vibe. Like, I know when I'm having a bad week, I'm having Call Your Mother for breakfast.
What's your favorite order?
You know this, the Thunderbird on the yuca bread.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's delicious. And when I moved out of the city and into Vienna, Nikki, you know this, that when you all announced that you were opening a shop less than a mile from me, I screamed in the street. And I looked up and I saw the branding, and then I shouted, and a woman was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, wow, this is embarrassing. I'm actually just screaming with joy because my favorite shop has come into my town.
That's what we love.
It was a big deal for me.
Glad we can be that for you.
Thank you. I'm such a dork. This season, I have been asking every guest, it's been in the newsletter, but I've been asking everybody about what's one thing they think HR should rethink. So I want to kick off our episode with asking you that question.
Great. Love the question. And we're going to get into this later about probably my why behind this. But we need to rethink HR to be a creative department. So it's not just task management, moving through processes, it's creative problem solving, designing experiences for our team, and just building something that is imaginative and new and exciting every day.
I love that. I actually just did a talk this morning, and I said that the two things an HR team should be is creative and curious. So I love that you're bringing that up because we're going to
totally
talk about
agree with
today.
Both of those.
Creative and curious. Okay, here we go. So, I honestly, your background is fascinating to me. You've built a career as this creative marketer and experience designer. How did you actually find out that this was your zone of genius?
I've always been creative. From like when I was a kid, I made zines. I would rearrange my room. I was,
Lovely.
designing things, like just literally everything.
Yeah.
Always interested in creating stories, and design that gave me a sense of purpose in the world. I think the first time that I really like felt this Jonah genius, I was the editor of, well, both my high school and my college yearbook.
Love.
Uh, so that's one of my nerdy qualities.
Mm,
And in those experiences, we were creating something very like real and tangible. It's like this book, this thing that you could hold in your hands.
yeah.
And there was a lot that went into it: design, photography, copy, everything there. But also, these were my first times that I got to be a boss as well. So I got to
Cool.
lead others in creating this very important thing too. And I think that's when it started to form.
I love that you mentioned yearbook because I wasn't the editor of my yearbook, but I was on yearbook
Yeah.
and I loved it.
I
It was
probably could have guessed that. We're just a
this
special sort of people.
this is literally what happens when I tell people I was an RA in college. Every single person is like, "Yeah, that
Mm,
tracks.
yeah.
Tracks about you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't know what that means. What does that even mean?"
Yeah.
But I love that you did that because I don't know, yearbooks are really fun. Do they still make yearbooks now? I was just thinking about
Probably
that.
not. It's
Yeah,
probably
that makes me
all
sad because it was like such a
online.
fun time.
Yeah. They told us you're not creating a
But I
yearbook for
also love that you
now.
mentioned,
You're making one for forever.
yeah.
And so who
Oh,
knows? These kids might not have a forever yearbook.
ugh, we got to change that. If you're listening and
Hmm.
you have kids, make them make yearbooks, honestly, because it's really worth it. Actually, I went back recently and read through some of the entries in mine, and I was like, wow, we were a different
Hmm.
time. It was a different time when I went to
Yeah.
school. That stuff would not fly today. So that's
Yeah.
always been really interesting to me. So you discover that zone of genius of like creative energy. Also, I felt the same way. Like that's when I really came to be in my zone. Um, and you're creating these compelling stories and designing these impactful experiences. How do you think that translates to building exceptional employee experiences?
Yeah, honestly, I've never really seen it any different. The team experience is just as important as our guest experience. And as a marketer, in every role I've had, we've always done employee experience
Wow.
campaigns, design. Like it's always been this 360 thing. And so um, it yeah, it stems from the beginning. I think, in my industry in hospitality, one of the sort of crowning original moments that started to really formulate this, I'm sure many people have heard of it, Danny Meyer's, his Setting the Table book. His philosophy is that you take care of the team first, then you're going to create exceptional customer experiences as well.
Yeah.
You prioritize their happiness, their growth, their well-being, and that's just going to naturally extend to the hospitality of our guests, and the brand will continue to thrive. And you just can't really have one without the other. You really need everything that you're telling your guests about who you are. Your team needs to be able to back up and say, yep, that is who we are, and vice versa. And so in the end, when I hear it a lot that, people go in to call your mother and they'll say to me, they're like, the team seems really happy
They
here.
do.
Like, what a great compliment to get. And it really is complimentary of the external brand, the very vibrant and energetic brand that we have, that guests know and that fans of ours known. And they feel it with the team experience as well.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, you mentioned the Danny Meyer setting the table philosophy. It's also interesting. They've done all these studies and surveys around how employee experience is correlated to customer experience. And so you're right. When your employees are having a good time, they feel like they're being taken care of. They're actually going to better serve the customer as well. And I think about
Yeah.
that quite a bit, honestly, is like, you're not just creating compelling stories externally, it's really looking internally as to how to talk to your employees.
Yeah. And half the experience is the food, but the other half is the interaction that they have with a team member when they're getting their morning bagel or coffee. And those are the things that are most memorable.
Yeah.
And you're really only going to get that extra high quality experience if that team member wants to be at work and enjoys their coworkers and feels a sense of purpose.
Yeah, and I will say like it's the place where I go where I'm stressed and I walk in and it's not just the food. I walk in and like the pink colors, how kind everyone is, like it does actually lighten my stress. So I really enjoy like
Love it.
I joke that it's my stress thing, but honestly like going and showing up and having a habit and getting my favorite sandwich is just like life-changing, and everyone's always so kind in the store. Like yeah, everyone always seems so
Yeah.
happy. You're right. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from that.
Music to my ears.
I'm just complimenting you. She did not pay me to say any of these things, by the way. I'm not sponsored by Call Your Mother. I just really love their sandwiches. Although I do love your swag too. We got to talk about that. Like your whole swag
Yeah.
has like such a look to it. When you think about marketing, there's so much overlap between marketing and HR, especially when you're thinking about the principles of like branding, storytelling, and how you can actually influence how companies attract and retain our talent. Can you talk to me a little bit about like how those principles, like having strong principles of branding and storytelling, can actually help companies better attract and retain talent?
Yeah. I'll start with the one and highlight the one that I think is the most important, that I always harped on as a marketer and continue on now in my role. Is it's about consistency. So people will find the holes when you're not consistent, both as a brand and as a consumer, and then, also as an employer as well. And what employee does not want consistency? Like, even when we are this
They all do.
incredibly rapidly growing brand, there is going to be constant change. We are updating our systems. We are changing how we do things. We are hiring, exponentially. There's a lot of noise going on, but we can fall back on the things that we can be consistent about. And we have found that our employees, they'll stick with us, and they would stick, with anyone else who know if they can rely on you. If you walk the walk, if you say that these are the things that we care about and this is how we show up for our team, and then you actually do it, it's just building that trust. And I think that all comes with consistency through any action that you're doing. And that can be in communication that you're sending out to teams. It can be in how you roll out new processes, introduce new people to the team. If it's all being done consistently, you'll start to build a trust.
Yeah, that's like an incredible brand. Like
Yeah.
that as branding is fascinating. It's like everyone was really up in arms about the Jaguar rebrand. Did you pick up on this like discourse where everyone was like, this doesn't look like it's always looked and da da da. And you just mentioned that. And my first thought was maybe if it was more consistent with their branding and what they were trying to set themselves up as a company, maybe people wouldn't have had such a bad reaction to it.
Yeah. Well, it's a big risk when you decide to say, okay, we're going to go in this whole new direction, because you need to start building that trust up from almost the ground up again. So yeah, I think too, I was saying that like there's a lot of things that like we can't commit to, and we'll talk more about our core values and how we show up. But these are the things that like we expect, it's very clear to our team members how, we as leaders show up, how we make decisions as a company, how we expect every individual at every level to show up every single day and do their work. That for us has not wavered in like 5 years, the time we've been around mostly. And our team knows this, and really they'll call us out too when we're not being consistent, or when we're, out of line in one of our core values. If they're not feeling a sense of belonging, we get to hear about it. And I think that consistency makes it clear when things are working and when things aren't working.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. That would be my number one thing. Consistency.
I love that. Be consistent. I can't tell you, like, that's great advice for any HR team as you're thinking about what it is you're rolling out, because trust is built in the consistency. I love that you said that, because we think about workplace trust not as often as I want us all to, but essentially by being consistent, you're building that trust with the employees where they're not instantly going to assume the worst in you, which is like what I feel like a
Yeah,
lot of HR people are up against, right? You then have advocates and allies, not people who are going to be naysayers and hate everything you do.
totally.
So
And it starts from the
I
very
love that.
beginning. Like we think about
Yeah.
that in our hiring process. Consistency, saying what the process is going to be up front and following through on it. We hear from so many candidates that even the ones we don't hire, but especially the ones that we do, are like, thank you for being transparent and direct about what your process would be. This was the most straightforward thing I've ever done. And I give you guys a lot of kudos for that. And we build that like goodwill.
Yeah.
So it can start there.
It's wild to think the littlest things have the biggest impacts and we forget
Mm,
about them all the time.
yeah.
Um, I love that I mean, like I have had an like enamored or obsession with marketing and all the things that they're doing. And I mean, you've had a career in it before you came to HR. Like when did you first notice that connection between your marketing skills and how to create a strong workplace culture?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question because it's hard to pinpoint because they've always really been hand in hand for me. I
Sure.
was thinking back to my very first marketing job right out of college. I had, I mean, it was an exceptional workplace culture. It was so collaborative, so creative. And since then, I've with my marketing teams and now with my people teams, I've always tried to like create a version of what that was, what that sort of like magical
Cool.
experience was then. It was, we were a small team. We were intensely connected to the mission. Everybody knew what we were trying to do, and we're super excited about it every single day. And our leaders brought that excitement every single day. So we felt that too. Everyone had a defined role, but we also knew that we were like greater together, and like the whole thing didn't work if everybody didn't, rise up to what their role was.
Yeah.
It was really fun to try new things, but also we failed a lot too, and it was kind of a safe place to fail because we were having a good time, and we took work seriously. I definitely was like, first job out of college, we worked really, really hard, but we took ourselves a little less seriously, and yeah, that was just, I think, a really great example of that, how creativity and collaboration equal this really dynamic workplace. And I don't know, I feel like every workplace should be like that. I don't know anything else. And
That'd
so
be the
that's
dream.
what I've tried to carry through all the way, up until, what I'm currently doing at Clever Mother.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like marketing, you're thinking about the consumer. And I think a lot of times we forget that employees are our consumer. They're
Yeah,
consuming our culture. And so, in the same way that you want a consumer to have like insane brand affinity and like be that advocate for it, you want the same thing for your employees. And so, the tie between marketing and HR is almost like we should be in lockstep almost all the time because probably what's happening in marketing is happening in some capacity in HR.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for us, probably higher percentage maybe than other companies,
Yeah.
but we are probably our biggest customer. Our team is eating our food every single day. They experience the spaces, they experience, everything that we would roll out to a guest. Our team is getting it first. And so absolutely thinking like them as customers, as brand advocates. Um, that's the way that we're going to propel so much more growth.
Yeah, and with that, it just makes me think a lot about like the storytelling that is vital in marketing. How, I mean, like you're in such an interesting and unique position. Like, how can HR leaders use storytelling to actually strengthen company culture and employer branding?
Yeah, I literally was just talking to my team about this recently. We have a really, I think, incredible benefit at Clever Mother. We've had now for our teams for over 5 years, since the very beginning when we only had one shop, where we provide free language classes to our teams. So our teams who front of house primarily are English speakers and in the kitchen are primarily Spanish speakers. We want to really build a cohesive team, and oftentimes uh, you know, and we work a lot. So we bring the opportunity to them. So we provide free language classes to our team who wants to learn the other language and get to know each other, and what they do a little bit more. So our team's created this awesome benefit. It's rolled out, 3 or 4 times a year. We have a 10-week semester class, and so many people take advantage of it. And one of the discussions I had with my HR team recently was like, this is great. We communicate the information about the dates of when this is, when you have to sign up, when it's starting. We put it on everybody's calendars. We do all the things to make it happen. And then it ends, and then we do it again. But there's so much more that's happening in that 10 weeks that we can share with our greater team about this amazing benefit. Let's go on to it's virtual. So let's go on and take a screenshot of everybody on their first day of class waving. Let's celebrate the people who completed the entire semester and graduated from the class and celebrate them so that other team members can see, oh, this is something that I can do too with the hours that I have and everything. Like, this is available to me. This is a free benefit that my employer is giving to me. And there's just so much more that I think we can do to tell the story around it rather than just, here's a benefit, use it, okay, and then be done with it.
Yeah, a lot of the storytelling in HR, I feel like we don't do it enough. And I think like there are so many cases of stories, whether it be like a successful course completion or like this amazing benefit you offer, or just like watching someone grow in their career, or a new set of promotions, right? Like there's so many opportunities to take those stories of the things that are happening at work and actually turn around and like celebrate them internally in your culture. So I love that you all offer this benefit, but by telling everybody else about it internally too, telling the story of like, here's why we're offering this benefit. Like, we want to help set people up for success, I think is so powerful. And it's like a thought that I think sometimes we miss a lot as HR people because we're so focused on the outcome that we forget, maybe I should tell the story of how we actually got here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one example of one I know like we want to work on. I think one that we do really well, you had mentioned promotions.
Yeah.
We're hiring a lot of managers because we're growing a lot. We're opening a lot of new shops.
Cool.
And over 50% of the team that we've hired into these leadership roles have come from hourly employees and, our growth stories and our promotion stories. And I think, when you get to a company of our size, promotions can start to be something that, are only sort of celebrated in a small group or in a silo and, within the shop that they're in or within the region that they're in. And we want to continuously share that there are growth opportunities for anybody here, and tell more people about these amazing team members who have grown. And so we blast out to all team members, all 350 team members when anybody gets a leadership promotion and what their new promotion is, a picture of them, some fun facts about them, how long they've been with the company. Because then people can start thinking, hey, I could do that too. That person has been here as long as I have, or that person looks like me, or, I met that person during my training and they're there now. Like, I could do that too.
Yeah.
And without that, this idea of growth becomes kind of more of just an idea.
Yeah. It's so powerful. It's like I've covered creativity a lot on the podcast, and I just want more HR people to realize that like we can craft really beautiful stories that like celebrate the work that we are doing, which can then inspire our employees to like do even better work or build a better culture. So there's so much to say here. And I think when we first talked, we chatted a bit about like mission and values and what is the state of like company values and how sometimes you have these optimistic values, but they're not necessarily aligned with what's talked about internally. And so I want to talk about, how do you actually craft that internal narrative that aligns those employees with the actual company mission and values?
Yeah. These things are the strongest when they're one and the same, when what you're talking about every single day and what you care about as a company are the things that, are also the principles listed on your website or in the job description. So, start there. If those aren't the same, then kind of red flag. I have the privilege of being the person who has created and defined
Fun.
the company values and our mission at Kava and, at Call Your Mother. So like, I know that they're not fake or unrealistic. Like the process in which we pulled them out of our DNA and how they ended up as, words on the paper, words on the poster was a real genuine process. And it was tried and tested now for years for us to know, okay, yes, these really stand true. So, no doubt that makes it easier to be able to share the narrative with the team when like, that they're genuine and that these are the things that we really do care about still. And, I think as best you can, like keep it simple. And I don't know, I'm a person who can find connections with many things. And so I'm sure there's an exercise of, okay, this is who we say we are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what people expect us to be because we've said this and we've committed to this in some way or another. And then over here, these are the things that we've been talking about every day. There's got to be some connections. And if not, in the very least, start talking about your core values.
Yeah.
Start talking about who you are and how you show up more every day, in addition to all the other very important things that we discuss internally as goals. And there'll start to be more alignment there. I really do think that if your core values are ones that you truly believe in, you can make all of your business decisions through them. This isn't just like an HR only fit function and it lives in HR, and HRs are the one who like talk about core values and hiring and performance reviews, and then it's done. But we use them as a rubric to be able to determine, what do we say yes to as a company? Probably more importantly, what do we say no to as a company when it comes to growth? And when it starts to infiltrate everybody's processes beyond just culture, in this bucket by itself, then it starts to stick.
For 12 years, the world's most innovative brands have trusted Working Not Working to find top-tier creative talent. Now they're helping you keep that talent with Internal. No vowels, pronounced internal. Internal is your go-to platform for unlocking the hidden passions of your team. With super personalized profiles, you can dig into your people's ambitions, interests, and secret skills in seconds. Who knew your project manager was a national champion pickleball player, D&D dungeon master, and a karaoke queen? Visit seeyourpeople.com and start matching your team's passion to the work that lights them up. That is like the ideal scenario, honestly. Like I have worked places where they have said their values were one thing and then everybody acted opposite of the values. And it was so hard because I feel like I'm a very authentic person. And when you're in those moments, you're like, wait a minute, am I like being gaslit right now? Like what's going on? Like everyone is saying they value transparency, but then they won't actually answer the questions in the meetings and they'll wait to talk about things secretly. So it's like, what? Like what you described is honestly the ideal scenario. And it's cool that you had the privilege of being the person who could define those. Like so many of us come into an organization are just handed values and then are having to do the hard work of transforming them. And it's been tough. So have you had to ever really use storytelling and transform an HR initiative like culture, like values to actually align better with the organization?
So I'll give you the example about our core values and sort of how they came about. When I started at Call Your Mother, we had one location and we were starting to grow. We were starting to think about, more locations. And the experience at this first Call Your Mother is something that was so incredibly special and magical. It was, first of all, just imagine it was dining in 2018 and
Yeah.
2019, something very different. We didn't have online ordering. People, including myself as a guest before I started working there, would like wait on the like down the block for like 45 minutes to get
It
their
was
bagel
hot.
sandwich.
You
It was
could
hot.
not
Like it
get a
was,
sandwich.
and then when you finally got inside, the music was perfect. The staff was
Yeah.
so energetic and helpful, and the food just like really blew you away. And when we talked about, okay, we're going to grow, like there's this fragility to how do we keep what's just so great about what this is. And so I really took it upon myself to say, okay, how do we bottle up this feeling, this magic here, and be able to grow and create a shared language that now we could start to train and hire based off of and replicate in its own way, as we continue to grow. Our our founder and owners and our team always, they'd use the word vibes, like the vibes are good in here, and like love
Vibes are
vibes,
awesome.
but sometimes hard to describe vibes. So, I really dug deep to really try to figure out what they really meant, and was able to distill that into a few ideas, which I then turned into an acronym for vibes, which turned into our core values. So now, 5 years later, I feel very confident that, we're at about 350 employees. We're in 4 states. Our team knows what vibes mean. They know what that means when we say they're top notch. They know what they mean when we say, these are things to work on. And that took a lot of storytelling, but it was all based on a very simple concept of vibes and 5 words and phrases that over time, through hiring, through orientations, through trainings, through all the things, through posters and celebrations, everyone now knows, okay, these are the 5 core values.
I love that you took vibes and then turned that into the acronym for the values. I am obsessed with that because, like, you can't forget vibes. I once worked somewhere
Yeah.
that had so many values that I, like, couldn't even remember them. And I was, like, the head of HR. I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't even know all these values." So, I love that you really took something that you all were talking about and transformed it into, "Here are our values," and also using the acronym VIBES is genius. So, that's so good. And
Yeah.
it must have been wild to see, like, you were there store 1, now you're store, I mean, so many more. Watching that scale has got to be exciting and maybe also terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly exciting that to see, because it's never going to be the same as what it is in store 1, or those people are never going to be the same. So
Of
I think the
course
most
not.
exciting thing
Yeah.
is that it's taken on its life of its own, and we're able to see our first core value is vibrant. And Call Your Mother's a very vibrant brand. Our experience when you come in, you're hit over the face. We have these bright pink buildings, all of that. But what it's not is, it's not a prescription for, okay, this is how you are vibrant, and we expect every single team member to look and be and act these ways, but it is something everyone can kind of bring their own thing to, and everybody is vibrant in their own ways and delivers that experience to guests and to team members in their own ways, and we let people run with that. And so um, that's what makes it exciting. Of course, there's something, I don't know if it's nerve-wracking at all or at all. It's because we have the framework, it
Yeah.
makes it so much easier to be able to coach and to know when you're out of line.
Yeah. You did great work in the beginning to basically build the foundation for, like, how people should behave at work, what kind of culture you're trying to build, how to be kind to your coworkers. So you did all this great work. And so I'm sure as you scale, like, yeah, scaling anytime is scary. But now that you have this foundation, probably a lot less
Yeah.
scary, which I
Yeah.
feel like is what you're saying. Like, a lot of people don't do that core foundational work, which is where I find HR teams to be, like, the most chaotic, is when they haven't done that work to really define what are the values, what's our operating
Totally.
system, how are we behaving with one another.
Yeah. I think
Like,
it's the most important thing for a brand, for a company when starting off. You can always iterate on it, but if you don't have that core purpose and that shared language on what are we doing, it's going to start to drift.
Mm-hmm.
And, before you know it, you'll be something that, potentially you didn't really want at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really, really important work to do at the very beginning. I don't think many companies invest in it at the very beginning as they should. And oftentimes it is, a catch-up project that's done. And which can be fine, I think, if you're being so honest
Yep.
with who you actually are and maybe how that has drifted away from where you were at the beginning, maybe for good reasons too. But we just don't want you to be saying one thing and
Acting in the way. Yeah.
totally acting another.
It's so interesting because before, so when the co-founders of Workweek, Adam and Becca, started the company, before they even wrote their business plan, they sat down and wrote their values and their operating principles. And they're the same values and operating principles we have to this day. And I
Love
think
it.
watching how much they cared about that was so impactful for me as a people leader, because I was like, oh, I'm coming in to work with people who get it, who understand the importance and the values of telling people, like, here's how we want to treat one another. Here's how we want to value one another. Here's how we want to work with one another. And that's like not the case everywhere. So I'm with you on when they do it from the
It's special.
beginning, it becomes like a very special thing. Like it has such a different impact. And if you're listening and you don't have your values set and you're really wondering where to get started, like there's also a ton of space for you to do that too. I think
Yeah.
we've just been lucky where we've had it since the beginning. It's been quite delightful, but I've also created values of my own, and that has been an uphill battle of a struggle as well.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I love about Call Your Mother is being a customer. Like I do love the pink, like obviously my bookcase is pink, my branding is all pink. Like I love the vibe of the restaurant. When I walk in, there's this cool art and the vibe is like very retro and hip, and that I love it. And so I have such a good time every time I go, and it makes me happy when I leave. So I'm thinking about that a lot, and like what lessons can we take from customer experience design and actually as HR apply that to like meaningful moments for employees?
Yeah. I love this question. I mean, my very first one is that everything in HR can be designed.
Yeah.
As much as, an employee handbook is going to be, 200 pages of just writing. Maybe that, not so much. It's good for that to be clean. But all your other communication, wrap everything with whatever you decide your employee brand to be. Our HR team is on Canva. They're designing things, all
Cool.
brand approved, that goes out, and it's all, it matches up with who we are and creates that vibrant brand for sure. But going back to what I was saying before, it creates that consistency. So
Yep.
design first for sure. I think too, in marketing and in guest experience, which is really, my background, we talk a lot about how we can create magical moments for guests. And
Yeah.
often these are like the low cost but high reward moments. So, you're just paying attention to people. That's really what it is. You're paying attention to what's, reading between the lines of what they might say or what they, what they say or what they don't say. You're watching their actions. All of these little details allow you as a marketer and customer experience to exceed their expectations, just because you've picked up on a few cues that could really make it special. And there's a great Disney book I read in the beginning of my marketing career around creating magical moments. So I think about this a
Yeah.
lot, is like that sort, you go to Disney and like, that's what the expectation is. You turn this like thing that like you expect it to be great. And it's great because they make it special. Like there are just people looking out at every moment to like turn it around and turn just what's supposed to be like the most magical day of the year actually into that, because they saw that, you know, you dropped your ice cream and they just end up giving you one, you know, for free, or, you know, whatever it might be. Like, you know, they see a kid with a Mickey shirt on, and so they try, and they know Mickey is nearby, so they radio into that Mickey to go over there. Like those are things that they practice. And like the biggest enabler of that in culture is empowerment. And we do that with guest experience. So we empower our teams to say, okay, if somebody is having somebody's order is wrong, you're gonna make it up to them and you're gonna give them a new order at no cost, and you know, something like that. Like we empower our teams to do that for guests. We also need to empower our teams to be able to do that for each other and for their employees, not always having to ask for permission. And, you know, this can get tricky with HR because there's guidelines and rules and, you know, all of that. But I think there are ways in which we can give managers guardrails to be able to create, we call them at Call Your Mother, we call them great frickin' experiences, GFEs. We try to deliver GFEs to everybody. And of course, it's very guest focused, but it's also about our team as well. And so much of that is active listening. It's picking up on the things that, you know, our teams may or may not be saying, and it's celebrating. So some of the ways in which we kind of give those some guardrails, you know, every single one of our shop teams has a monthly fund budget that they can do whatever to celebrate their team. And that's an easy, fun win. But even in the way that we encourage and direct our teams to nominate their team members for Employee of the Month, for empowering managers to provide development opportunities for their team without having to go on a track for development. Like you can do that. You can just start to coach them and that's okay. So I think it's really all about that empowerment.
Yeah.
To create those magical moments for our team.
I love that. I think I also read that Disney book. I feel like I also read it. I can't remember the name of it right now. My CEO loves Disney, so we always look at that. But I love this idea of like creating magical moments for employees. I feel like a broken record sometimes because I'm like, to deliver a great employee experience, it's like, it's not that intense. You could just think of little moments that create magic, like birthdays, anniversaries, like just they do something great. Like there's so much opportunity to really develop just like such a good employee experience by fostering magic, just like being imaginative. And like that's coming back to our curiosity and creativity at the beginning of what we talked about. Like there's so much opportunity in HR, and I feel like we could be more magical sometimes.
Yeah. That's our theme for 2025.
That's our theme. That could be our 2025 theme, magic.
Be more magical.
Yeah, be more magical. I have been reading a lot of Harry Potter fanfic, which I have been talking about way too much, but I've learned a lot about magic, so here we are. What I usually like to wrap every episode with like a little bit of future looking and a little bit of advice giving, because I just think it's fun and it gives it like a little story wrap. But what is one trend in branding or customer experience that you think HR leaders should adopt to stay ahead in like the future of work?
Well, I'm going to continue the theme and talk about personalization. So, not every customer journey is the same. You know, the way that we market to guests, you know, digitally, in person, you know, everyone comes in at a different segment of, you know, like a written out customer journey. And I want to encourage us as HR leaders to personalize our employee experience as well. I think once you build the basics down of, okay, all team members need to be onboarded this way for these reasons, or trained this way for these reasons, then you can start to adapt for certain levels and roles. And that level of personalization will be a magical moment. for a team member for sure, but also I really think we'll start to build more of an emotional intelligence of, okay, this is why I'm doing this thing this way, and this is why this other person does this thing this way, and that's makes sense, and that's okay. And I think maybe the difference for HR is that, we need to have this, or we should have a level of transparency applied to this, because, then you're just you might build, if you're, not on purpose, but, unfairness, or people saying, oh, they did this and why am I not getting this, and all of that. But I really do believe in building that emotional intelligence, building that culture of like understanding the why, so that we all can be better and be building this thing that, all is connected in the end.
I love that you were bringing up personalization, because I was just thinking as you were saying that, like, personalizing experiences is also super inclusive. And so like being able to do that and give that to your employees means you're building a better and more inclusive environment. And I love, love, love that you followed it up with, but you have to be transparent about this, because you're right. Creating an experience for one person and not allowing the transparency so people understand why can actually backfire and be uninclusive. And so the fact that you're saying like personalize it, but be transparent, I love that. And I think that could be a game changer for any HR team, is really thinking about the art of that and how to make sure that you're communicating it regularly so that no one feels left out.
Yeah. I mean, and so much of what we do for HR is backed up by policy, and we do want to treat everybody and all experiences and cases the same way. So it can be a challenge for an HR leader to learn a different way to do things.
Yeah.
Because they want to follow the rules. They want to hold people accountable. And I totally get that. We just have to start to build in the why behind how this makes us all work better together.
I love that. Piece of advice. So what advice do you have for HR professionals who want to think more like marketers when they're designing workplace programs?
I feel like we've touched a lot of these, but the biggest one is like show, don't tell. Like we can tell people that language benefit example I gave earlier is like, yeah, we can tell people about our benefits, or we can show them. We can have our team members tell the story for us instead of us. We can build them as ambassadors. We can have testimonials. That's probably, number one. And then I would say number two is think about communication in terms of campaigns. And so everything isn't just like communication A, communication B, communication C. It's all just like on its own, but like, how are we wrapping it together to create an even bigger impact to our team so that they remember it, they're excited by it, they follow through on these things, and also that we get the credit of all of the work that we're putting into it. I think that's huge.
I love that. The Think Like a campaign, I wish I mapped more of my HR programs like in a marketing campaign. I'm like, here's the touch point. Like I'm writing the comms. I'm like, here's the touch point. Here's the experience I want people having. So I love that advice. And I think I've talked to a lot of different marketers, and I think the relationship between HR and marketing is so strong and should continue to inform a lot of what we do and how we do it and how we connect with these employees who like in the outside world are being bombarded by like different types of marketing comms. Like why not internally give them something similar, a similar experience? Not to be bombarded, but like a personalized and transparent experience.
Yeah. And fun.
And fun.
Totally.
Well, this podcast has been can I call it a GFE? Just kidding.
Yes.
It has been. I love it. I love the acronyms. You guys are like the acronyms. This has been so, so fun. For people listening who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
LinkedIn. I'm Nikki Rappaport.
Amazing.
You can follow me on Instagram if you want to see pictures of my kid.
Love that.
And visit us at Call Your Mother.
Yes. Okay. Can you tell us, are there new cities that Call Your Mother might be in anytime soon? Maybe you can't tell. That's probably confidential.
No new cities yet.
Okay.
Not because I can't tell, but because we're still percolating.
Yep.
But we do have more locations opening in Denver and more in Virginia opening in January. So
Excited.
Stay tuned.
I can't wait. I have one a mile from me and I've never been happier on earth. I mean, I was so close to the P Street location. I literally lived 1 block away from it. So this has been a little bit of a change, but
We'll just follow you around.
Follow me everywhere. I'm a Call Your Mother fangirl. I aspire to be a regular every place I go regularly. So here's to hoping, but I will just tell you, every time I go into Call Your Mother, someone's always smiling at me and they're always saying like, hi, how are you? Right away. And I'm like, wow, this is my happy place. It's becoming my happy place. Just to get my sandwich. Thank you so much for making time for me today, for sharing like your wealth of experiences. I hope you come back on the pod again in the future. Maybe that's a little bit of a teaser and we can talk about more things marketing, because I just think you've done some really cool work and it shows in the customer experience I'm having what great employee experience you've built at Call Your Mother.
Love to hear that. Thanks, Hibba.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.